Hey guys, Ty here. Well, we've been talking about the pattern change and the uptick in weather ahead here to be on the rise here, and now that's coming to fruition with tomorrow culminating in a enhanced risk that entails a 30% wind threat across parts of south central Mississippi and even parts of Louisiana. A hail threat which entails Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas, and then we even now have a threat for strong tornadoes on Monday, stretching all the way from south central Mississippi throughout parts of Louisiana and even right on the Louisiana-Texas line. A lot of the premier models are also showing a lot of evidence to back up that heightened tornado threat and wind threat as well. Also, another thing to make note of is going to be the timing of these events here, which could actually span into the late evening and overnight Monday, so some of these could be occurring after dark. Make sure you have a way to get watches and warnings and stay weather aware. Hey everybody, Ty Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone is doing well and has had a good weekend. Also getting a head start here and wishing everyone happy holidays. So, the thing about the holidays is we have this big storm system on the way and it's looking to cause a little bit of trouble here. So, we're definitely going to be keeping track of that over the holiday and really beyond that, because weather pattern gets pretty active here. But we're going to be particularly talking about tomorrow's setup because we've gotten an gnarly update here. Actually up to enhanced risk now. This is the first time in a while that I've seen an enhanced risk in almost what feels like maybe about 2 months close to it. But at least a month at the very least. So it's getting a little bit intense out here. And then also the threat for damaging winds and tornadoes is quite high. Here's the 30% wind area that's existing, especially across parts of southern Mississippi, even parts of Louisiana coming into play as well. Can't disinclude Texas and Arkansas either. That's just inside this slight risk area as well. But of course, that 30% area is where we have the highest confidence of severe weather in the form of damaging winds. Also a 15% hail threat, but this is what also is the most eye-catching to me. The chance of not only tornadoes being at 10%, but the hatch risk. Have not seen this in a bit either. So we're pretty much in full storm mode here on the channel. So make sure, like I said, make sure you're smashing that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and obliterating that share button, because we will be going live tomorrow. It'll be our first time in a while. So let's do what we can to try to get the warning out to as many people as possible. Another thing I want to make note of, or actually a couple of things I want to make note of. The threat of nocturnal tornadoes is actually pretty high with this setup here. Not a guarantee, but the likelihood is definitely there this time, more so than in previous events. And then also another thing to remember, nocturnal kind of takes a different context during this time of year, considering the fact that it gets dark earlier. So about 6 or 7 o'clock, it almost looks like nighttime. So if you're out around that time, make sure you're staying weather aware and having a way to get those watches and warnings. That being said, we'll go on and move on to the nitty gritty here, which is the model data that we need. So here we are looking at the models here. We've gotten into range of our convective models. The two favorites I like to look at are the HRRR and the NAM 3 kilometer here. Both of these are showing some really favorable kinematics at both the mid and the lower levels of the atmosphere. Right now we're looking at about 500 millibars, and you can see a really strong jet streak in position right here. And you see a lot of key features like that signature little ski jump that we always talk about on the channel here when it comes to looking for severe weather. So definitely a telltale sign of things to come. You see that you see where these wind barbs are pushing in that northeasterly direction. If we were to switch this over to 850 millibars on this screen for really both of these, you'll kind of see that. It's also prevalent on the NAM 3 kilometer, just like it is on the HRRR to the left here. So we'll go ahead and flip both of these forward and kind of take them out of the loop here so we can get a closer look. So now we have the HRRR loaded. We'll go with that one first. So we'll watch this go forward here. Here's that low pressure area right here, and this is going to be our point of interest. You almost see a little bit of a look similar to that of a classic spring style setup here. It's not uncommon for second season, but to see this looking as robust as it is definitely has me a bit concerned here. And notice the timing of this too. This will be closer to 8 o'clock. So like I said before, towards the beginning of the video, it's going to be dark around this time. And with the low-level jet kicking in the manner that it is here, where we could see 50 to 60 knots, definitely an environment suitable for all forms of severe weather, but especially damaging winds and tornadoes at this point. As the front organizes and moves up and really starts to push off to the east here, this does bring a chance for severe weather to the following day as well, which will be Tuesday, albeit the Storm Prediction Center and myself included really don't see a whole lot from this right now. This is at best maybe a marginal risk. Could see brief damaging wind gusts, maybe some hail. Tornado threats probably going to diminish at that point. But of course, we always have to watch because things change pretty quickly. That's just how the weather works. But this is us looking at the NAM 3 kilometer as far as Monday is concerned, and a lot of congruency between the two. Sometimes you don't get a lot of agreement between the NAM and the HRRR, but to see this here, albeit a couple of minute changes, leads me to have a lot of confidence in there being a pretty notable severe weather setup tomorrow. So this is us looking at both of the regions as far as the kinematics are concerned at both the mid and lower levels. This is us looking at the moisture returns. And the main thing to make note of here, and this is pushing towards the early morning into the afternoon hours, is look how rich this moisture is. It makes a really strong push at this point too. I have plenty of 60-degree plus dew points. We're even getting into the mid to upper 60s in some of these regions here. In our enhanced risk region, we're even starting to push towards 70. So especially towards the evening, this is going to help fuel the storms further, add to that instability so these storms can last later into the evening. Definitely not what we are wanting to see here at all. And unfortunately, with this being right around the time of the holiday week, I'm worried about anyone that will be traveling on the highways towards this region. I'm pleading with you to stay weather aware just in case things really start to get ugly here. It has the potential to. There's no guarantees to it. Definitely don't want anyone to panic, but you definitely need to be watching this for sure. And you can even see that moisture nose pushing off to the east here. And this is what's going to help keep the potential severe weather alive into Tuesday. And you can see this on both the models here. I don't know how this one got out of its regional state where I was looking towards the southeast, because this is the main area we're looking at this point, or the main point of interest, so to speak. But if we were to look at the NAM 3 kilometer here to your right, you can see almost an identical look. And the thing that kind of gets my attention more so than anything is NAM 3 kilometer is actually a little bit more aggressive with the moisture return versus the HRRR. Both of these are pretty good convective models, but to see that on the NAM 3 kilometer is pretty interesting. NAM tends to be a little bit more aggressive, which is not surprising, but to see how close they are, how congruent they are, so to speak, definitely also gets my attention as well. The moisture return itself, oddly enough, does weaken as we head into Tuesday here, and the timing's a little bit different, but nonetheless here, a lot of congruency for Monday setup, and then Tuesday, I'm still going to keep a close eye on that. I may discuss it towards the end of tomorrow's live stream, but we'll see what happens with that. But in either sense, a lot to be on the lookout for. So next thing we're going to do here is set our temperature maps up, and we're going to go ahead and take a look entirely at the southeast here at this point. And also take note of how warm it's going to be come tomorrow across this region. Already got the lows here towards maybe the mid to upper 50s. So it's this is already a tell right here of what could lie ahead. This is definitely indicating an environment that is more than suitable for severe development, especially across the enhanced risk region that we've been looking at. Getting into the mid to upper 70s even in some places is also definitely a eye-opener here for sure. This is what we're seeing on the HRRR here, of course. And we see the same thing kind of going into Tuesday with this model as well. NAM, of course, looks like it's a little bit more on the aggressive side here. Still seeing that same look, but actually slightly cooler, which I find a little bit interesting there. But it does look like for the most part we're still seeing, for the most part, plenty of congruency. But it is important to note that little key difference in temperature, because a couple of degrees could make the difference. I still think severe weather will happen regardless of which of these two outcomes would come to fruition, but it does kind of give you an idea of what we could expect throughout the day leading up to the event that would happen later in the evening. So now we get into the real nitty gritty, the real details here. We're actually looking at just how much energy is about to be in the atmosphere. In Cape here in particular, I always like looking at the mix layer. And we are really starting to get into much more idealistic numbers here. This is why I always don't like looking at the, this is why I often like looking later towards the, or closer to the actual time frame of the severe event, and looking at the convective models versus the global models. They don't really do a great job of depicting how much CAPE can be available in comparison, of course. But what we can see here is we're getting into some pretty high numbers here, getting above 1,000, even some 1,600s here towards the coast here. Could maybe even see an area pop up just off the coast where we could see about a CAPE of 2,000 joules per kilogram. Very explosive, close to explosive environment for severe weather. Looking at some of these soundings here, this is one from the HRRR we just looked at here, and you see pretty good numbers here as far as the hodiograph, or pretty good look here from the hodiograph. The skew-T looks pretty solid here. We got decent lapse rates, especially towards the higher levels of the atmosphere. Other numbers such as 3 CAPE look good. Surface CAPE looks good. Lift is a little bit on the bottom end, so to speak, but everything else is kind of indicating that threat for a tornado, maybe even a stronger tornado here. Can't rule out something above EF2 to EF3, maybe even higher than that. So again, like I said, this is a dangerous look. And we'll go ahead and actually look at this on the NAM3 kilometer as well. Get a good look at parameters too. And interestingly enough, we're a little bit different here, but not by too much, maybe about 100 joules per kilogram. I don't think that is going to make too much difference there. We're going to click a spot over towards our enhanced risk area where we're at 1225, for example. And for the most part, if you compare the two skew-Ts here, it looks pretty identical. It's pretty moist towards the surface in the mid-levels here. A couple little points where there's some dry slots, which is interesting, but nonetheless here, looks like a pretty similar deal here. Surface CAPE looks really good with this. The energy helicity looks really good. 3 CAPE is actually very high here, so that's definitely something to take note of here. Also noting damaging wind and hail potential, all of it's there. So again, same look pretty much. Slightly better 0 to 1 kilometer wind shear here, so having to keep an eye on that as well. But both of these indicate a probable hazard type of tornado and some solid analogs here. So that being said, very dangerous evening could be ahead of us here within the next 24 hours. So also, I guess some other things we could take a quick look at, because we're not going to put too much more into this video. I know you want to probably get ready for the week ahead here. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the lapse rates as well, and kind of get a look at our hail threat too. Because if it's not tornadoes and wind damage, of course, the hail is also going to be another thing that bothers people. But that being said here, and while I can't blame you for being concerned about hail, lapse rates are going to be the steepest more so off to the west of the setup of the tornado threat, I think, more so than it will be closer towards that Louisiana-Mississippi line. I've always been, since I've been looking at this setup, I've been kind of leaning towards that area. And even then, it's not like we have super steep lapse rates. We get mainly towards 6.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer. So this isn't going to be a baseball size hail type event. So you don't have to worry about that too much. But nonetheless here, looking at both of these runs, with the exception of the NAM3 kilometer here, kind of pointing towards this little pocket here between Arkansas and Mississippi being steep here, it doesn't really give a strong sense of a hail threat right now. This does give a decent look, but if you look at the significant hail parameter, we're at 0.3. Really, for a significant hail threat to be notable, you have to have one above. You have to have an index above 1. So that being said, I'm not really too concerned about the hail threat as much, but nonetheless, it can still happen. Another thing I guess we'll look at real quick is the significant tornado parameter on both of these. And for the most part, I'm actually expecting some decent values here to be popping up later in the day here. A couple areas in the red here to make note of, and interesting to note what time we're seeing these pop up. And it's going to be right around 01Z where we see numbers getting close to 3 and even beyond. And we were looking at a number like this earlier. A little bit of contamination in the sounding, but not enough to really disregard it for sure. But definitely having to take note of the damaging wind threat along with the tornado threat. Even then, I think that maybe just before 8 o'clock is when I think the strong tornado threat is going to be highest. If we were to look at NAM, we're probably going to see a slightly different look, but not anything too dissimilar. We're seeing a couple pockets of red here, but it's interesting to note that it's a little bit further to the south here. Oh, wow. And that's actually a good sounding here too. Not much in the way of contamination, and that is a really nice little loop here, or nice little low-level loop in regards to the hodograph from 0 to 1 kilometer here. The cape looks pretty good at both the mixed layer and the surface. Like I said, there's a nice little wet bulb right here. There's a nice little dry slot right here towards the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. Definitely gives a impressive look for sure. So like I said, this day has a lot of potential. The ceiling could be high with this, or it could be nothing at all. I'm kind of leaning towards it being something though, but all we can do is really hope for the best at this point. With this threat, of course, as we head to the overnight hours, it's going to drop off, thankfully. And then as we go into the following day, we don't really see any resurgence of a tornado threat beyond that point. So here's another look again from the NAM 3 kilometers. This is looking towards the following morning and the day after. See, pretty much just nothing to go off of there. So last thing we're going to do here is take a look at the radar, and we're going to go from that point here. So we'll throw this one into a loop, and you can see for the most part, we get some pretty messy looking storms, some embedded supercells in a linear mode to form more so later into the evening, and then kind of persisting into the overnight before eventually it loses strength. So between 22 to 02Z, which would be roughly between 5 o'clock to maybe 9, maybe 10 o'clock is when we have that potential for severe weather. And then after that, the threat starts to diminish as these storms meet up with that cold front here, and it could still cause some grief here across the rest of the southeast on Tuesday, but the threat won't nearly be as impressive as what tomorrow will be. And we see a pretty similar deal going on here with the NAM as well, albeit I'm clicking the wrong thing right now anyway. Oops. But if we were to look at the NAM here, it's a pretty similar deal. You see a little bit of an indicator, even a confluence band. And I'll get into more of what that is in a later video, but if we go back and watch the loop kind of take shape here, you see this little area pop up here and push off to the north. That's an indicator of potential confluence band, and that comes into play heavily when it comes to severe weather. And I think this is also a reason why the enhanced risk ended up being issued, because you see that look with more prevalent severe weather outbreaks. But of course, like I said, there's a lot of uncertainty with those as well, so kind of hard to predict. So like I said, still can be blown wide open really easily. So it's not the time to panic, it's not the time to be scared. Just be prepared to stay weather aware. But that being said, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. Smash that like button, obliterate that subscribe button, and decimate that share button. But this has been Tire Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning before the stream, and then when things are going off, we'll be here as well. Till then, take care, have a good night, horns up, and I'll see you soon.